morning, good evening, good afternoon, greetings and salutations, and welcome to this wonderful special edition of the Women of BSV with the beautiful Robin DeLissa. We have Cain all the way over in Australia, who is the back-end blockchain developer from Vaionex and the architect of the new STAS SDK. And then we are joined by the phenomenal OG, who is Jerry Chan, who I have seen all over the place for years. He's a real prominent figure in the space, who used to be a Wall Street technologist and is founder of Frobots. So I'm going to hand over to the beautiful Robin DeLissa, and we're going to have a wonderful chat with these two. So thank you for coming, everybody, as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Brad.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. So I know we're going to jump into the history of tokens on Bitcoin with Jerry. You want to take away the floor, Jerry?
Wow, okay. Big open topic. History of tokens. Well, I guess, I think if there's one thing that has been common to pretty much every blockchain project since Bitcoin was invented, has been the use of tokens, right? Because if you think like the ICO boom of Ethereum, that's effectively tokens. DeFi, those are tokens. And before even Ethereum, there were projects in Bitcoin which attempted to make basically to create tokens which were not Bitcoins, which could have a different value than Bitcoin. So necessarily that means the Bitcoins themselves that carried these tokens around must be very small amounts of Bitcoin. It has to be like less than whatever the actual token value is. Otherwise it doesn't make sense, right? Otherwise you're just transferring Bitcoins. And so there was many projects I think the first one, I don't think it was actually an implementation, but it was a protocol that was tried out. It was called Colored Coins, which we'll get back to is very similar to what some of the modern techno platforms are kind of extensions of. But there was like Colored Coins, there was like Mastercoin, there was Counterparty or XCP, there was like Mastercoin, Omni. There, very many of them were all kind of different spins of like, hey, how do we create these things that can ride on top of blockchain and not be Bitcoins themselves, so that we as the issuer can sort of basically dictate what these things are, what they represent, what they're worth, that sort of thing, without actually inventing our new a whole new blockchain. And a lot of those projects failed because of technical reasons, and we don't really have to get in here, but it's a pretty much the same technical issues that Bitcoin solved, right? So Bitcoin solved them by the way Bitcoin solves them, and every blockchain sort of solves it in its own way, to different degrees of success. And so if you're not building a token on top of Bitcoin or a more prominent blockchain, you end up just building your own blockchain, which is what a lot of projects do these days, right? They don't bother trying to build a token on top of another blockchain. They just like, you know what, I'm just going to make a new blockchain. Well, there you go. Then you have your token. And so this has always been the holy grail. I mean, it's been the first use case besides, cash, I guess, besides just moving Bitcoins around. It's really the first use case of blockchains. It's probably the use case that's really what everybody's been working on for the last 10 years or more. So that's kind of the history. And I think we are seeing an explosion of a newfound, well, it's not really new. That's probably a wrong word to use, because like I said, it's been worked on in different variations throughout the last decade. But recently, there's been a reinvigoration of interest in tokens on Bitcoin, BTC, because of something called ordinals, which we can get into later, but it's kind of like finally made possible because some people in BTC land, like the core developers who are very, very, very slow to do any sort of upgrades or anything with the protocol in BTC, has finally made it possible to sort of work around and do. And so there seems to be, what we're seeing, something like the rush of people doing ICOs in Ethereum all over again, or NFTs, picture NFTs, Bored Ape NFTs, but on Bitcoin recently. Yeah.
So since we cater to people that are completely new to the field, like just curious, crypto curious, if you want to use the word crypto, Jerry, just break that down in the most layman's terms. What's the point of having tokens on top of tokens? Like, what's the point of having tokens on top of a blockchain?
Well, the main premise is you want the issuers to be able to dictate what these things are worth, right? So you can't really, you have no flexibility in dictating what's a Bitcoin's worth because it's just whatever someone's going to pay for them. So if you're going to move, say, a Bitcoin around, then that thing can only, you're going to be moving a Bitcoin around for its value. But what if I wanted to move something around which nominally has no value, but it represents something that has value because it's for instance, the financial explanation would be like certificates of deposit, right? A certificate of deposit at a depository means that like I've deposited a gram of gold, I can pass around this certificate of deposit.
Yeah.
That certificate of deposit, to me it's worth something. It proves that I own this gold at a depository and I can go take it out. But if I if I passed it around, maybe that right could be transferred, maybe not. I mean, there's legal stuff surrounding these things, but that's the whole idea of tokens, right?
You can use the analogy of a banknote, I guess, right? At least when we're on the gold standard, right?
Yeah. Or a movie ticket. That's another something that you can do as a token, right? A movie ticket is something that you can pass around, and it's where Bitcoin is like the value of the paper it's printed on. The point that it's a movie ticket at a specific theater for a specific show is some sort of extra information that the issuer can do into this, like distill into this token, so that people moving this thing around can kind of treat it like a ticket now, not just Bitcoins.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So we have the two of you gentlemen on the show today to talk about the new breaking development, which is Vaionex's new STAS SDK. So let's let Cain tell us about his development in this new SDK.
Yeah, well, actually, the SDK just came out, I think last week. It was officially released. So it's not Vaionex, it's a public repository. So, we're looking for contributors as well. And, as we build the community around STAS token builders and things, expecting people to add to this library as we go. So this thing, I spent a good chunk back in February building out the core elements of it, sort of just the harder parts, you could say, of the library. I just remember spending a couple of weeks just head down and completely focused. But leading up to building it, I'd been thinking about it for months already because we do a lot with STAS tokens, and I noticed some things that we could use in the library that we didn't have at the time, that we're using the TAL public library that they had. So once I started building it, it's sort of the code just poured out of me, and I just completely focused on everything. And after a couple of weeks, the core elements were done, and then everything was just building all the test cases and adding in some bits and pieces, and just refining everything. So the SDK is out now, and the whole idea is now we want to get people using it as much as possible, and so that's where we're at.
Okay, so how does the STAS protocol differentiate itself from other protocols, and why do you choose to build on top of it? What's the main differentiator?
Well, STAS, consider STAS like a smart contract on top of Bitcoin. But the difference is, when Jerry was talking about colored coins and tokens, and that he's talking about Satoshis that are sort of painted with a different value or a different identity, but they still look like Satoshis on the blockchain, right? So you couldn't really tell one without the other sometimes, unless you had, say, an indexer, or sometimes they add some metadata to the script as well. But the idea of the STAS token is that the token itself contains also the metadata, but it's actually an actual token. You can't spend it like a regular, say, BSV native, spend it in the same way. You have to construct a transaction in a different way. And the smart contracts for STAS, they have set rules, what you can do with them in a transaction. So this prevents mistakes happening, such as accidentally spending a Satoshi that is actually a token, but maybe the wallet provider didn't know that. Maybe they just thought it was a Satoshi and they just added it to another transaction and sent it away and merged it with a whole heap of other ones. So what the STAS is, it's a layer 0, so it's the same as a regular Satoshi, except it is an actual token that is, and the Satoshis that are in there are locked, and they can't be unlocked unless you actually, call it, say, a redemption, which would get the Satoshis back out of the token, right? So it's a way of preventing those type of issues, as I mentioned, like the spending. But mostly it's all about having a blockchain native token protocol. That is the biggest thing. So it works exactly like regular Satoshis in that sense.
Okay. Gary, same question. Why STAS from your point of view?
Right. Thanks. I think the biggest reason or the biggest difference between STAS and other protocols is with STAS, the thing, it's pretty much, it's on chain. I guess in one sentence, it's on chain. For those who are developers will understand what that means. But for those who are not, what it means is the code that that makes it a token. Okay, so I guess let me first define. Look, for you to make a token, there has to be some code that sort of defines a token that makes sure the basic stuff is sort of preserved. Like the basic stuff being that you can't accidentally burn this token, lose it by sending it to a wallet you didn't intend to, or sending it to a wallet that doesn't understand it. You can't maybe accidentally send it to someone you're not allowed to, perhaps. Like there could be rules like that. But simply just preserving this metadata, like for instance, if it's a ticket in our previous example, preserving the fact that every time you transfer this token, it keeps that metadata with it. Like that's something very basic. All of that logic is in Bitcoin script. So it's actually enforced by the mining nodes of Bitcoin, where, and of course, beyond that those basic conditions, you can write, like Cain said, some more complex smart contracts, some crazy conditions, and pay this person if so much somebody else is paid, blah blah blah. But the fact that everything's on chain, and that's the one thing that's different from, say, mostly all the other token platforms out there. All the other token platforms are doing their logic, their business logic, or even the basic tokenness logic off chain, like in either its own its own state machine, its own indexer. It's somewhere else. It's not. You won't be able to see it on the blockchain. Maybe you can see its artifacts, like what it does after it's processing, but you can't actually see the logic that it's using to do the processing. So that's kind of like the big difference. And I think you see, like, I guess somebody mentioned earlier that that there's a couple of stablecoin projects out released using STAS. That's actually where the difference is. If you want something that acts very much like money, where it really is, it's self-contained, it doesn't require some particular third-party technological platform to run, right? It's the blockchain and that's it. Where that matters, because you want all your logic on chain, are applications where you kind of want it to act as close to cash as possible.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't need some intermediary. Like you don't need an intermediary between me and the person I'm paying when I'm using cash, right?
Right.
As opposed to, say, writing a check. Writing a check needs an intermediary, the bank, right? So,
right. And I imagine there's a lot more security if the logic's on chain as well, right?
Yeah, I suppose the trust-wise, yeah, you can trusting the miners, I suppose, the nodes of the blockchain, as opposed to trusting that the people who wrote the company that's running the servers, or the people who wrote the logic, didn't make any mistakes. I mean, there could be mistakes.
See the logic on chain. I mean, that alone would enhance security in my mind.
Yeah. I suppose, yes, that's true. I mean, from a security standpoint, there's nothing, there's no funny business. But then again, I wouldn't say it's necessarily just because of that it's more secure, because there are some people who argue, well, it's very secure if you just trust this company, right? Because if anybody made a mistake in the logic or the bugs, if they screw up, well, it's the company's fault. You can sue the company. It's just like, if I pay somebody, I mean, I can sue my security company for not doing their job, where, they would argue that you can't really sue miners as easily, right? Sure. They're kind of just running the code. If you made a mistake with the code, it's not their fault that it didn't work. So there are trade-offs.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, so let's talk about use cases with the new scripts. Who wants to talk about?
Yeah, Yeah, I'll talk about that. That's part of the new SDK. So we have, a couple of new scripts. There's 4 in total. So there's 4 templates. It contains the legacy STAS token script. So the original one that came out. The second script we have is what we call STAS 50. STAS 50 it just allows for more outputs in a transaction. So STAS have, as I mentioned, they're a smart contract. They have set rules, what you can do with them, and how you can construct transactions. Regular STAS tokens can have up to 4 outputs per transaction. So this STAS 50 can have up to 50 outputs. So it's just an increase of limitations there. But the more unique tokens we have, STAS 20. This is the one that Bernard from Senti has been issuing a stable coin with. So this one is technically it's because it's STAS 20, you could think of it like an ERC 20, like a Ethereum type token. So it's trying to be relevant to that. And yeah, it's more for fungible tokens, but it can be used for all sorts of use cases, right? It's not designed to be a certain one thing. It's just a plain token that you can send to other addresses. You can merge the tokens together. You can split them into multiple parts. And that is a general functionality. And you can do atomic swaps and these type of things. The other token script we have, which is quite exciting, is the STAS, we call it STAS 789 token script. And this one allows for adding more data to the token on a transfer. So imagine that I sent you a token and I could add a message in that token, or I could add some metadata in that token and you would receive that token. But the thing is, you cannot remove previous data that was already on there. That is the thing here. So it's like having a little mini blockchain, you could say, inside a token, right? You have this immutable data trail that happens throughout the token's lifetime span. And use cases such as supply chain, just one to think of, if you had all the entities as part of the supply chain, that have an address that's registered to their company, and then this token is created at the start of the cycle, and then as it goes through each of the processes, they could sign off each of the checkpoints. And then what you have is an immutable trail that is also publicly verifiable without needing to trust a third party. And you can see where it's going through. You can see who's responsible at certain times of its life. And if something does go wrong with that that processing of the packages or whatever it is, you always can fall back to who had it previously and they've signed for it, and it's immutable. No one can change the logbooks and say, oh, we'll just sort of we'll pretend this fell off the back of a truck and we'll just sign it off and say that we don't know where it is, right? We'll just change the logbooks. You can't do that, obviously, with a blockchain. So, it's all about data integrity. Use cases could be, anything. It's really just up to people's imagination. So, really excited about this token and to see what people make of it, to be honest. So,
well, how is it different from tokens that existed already, or some of the solutions that we had for supply chain on blockchain?
Well, this one in particular, the data is always inside the token script. So that means you don't have to rely on an indexer, right? So if you have a token and it didn't contain all the metadata, it didn't contain the history or all the updated data to the token, you'd have to ask an indexer to get that information. So This is more of a blockchain-based, you could say, immutable trail you could build use cases on top of.
Amazing. All right, that's exciting. Yeah. Why the name 789 for that last script?
Look, I think it was toss up between 1, 2, 3 and 789, but it's because you can add more data. So the idea is that it's continuing. So 789, you can continue the data appending as you go.
There's got to be some inside joke because you and Jerry have this grin on your face.
Look, I didn't even come up with the name. For me, I was just like, guys. Actually, it took them a while. I asked, Robin from Vaionex, and I was asking STAS Token Company. I was asking them. I was like, well, what's the name? I need to add it, and it just took them a couple of weeks to work it out. And I was like, but it's good to take the time.
Over here, like prolifically writing code, and they're hung up on the name. Pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I
Alright.
mean, it was good that we waited because we had some original names just to start with when we were, making the implementations, and the original name for that one was STAS Append, and it just didn't sound right. But I said that'll do for now. I just need to get something working, and so I can build it into the libraries, and then we just changed it all out once we worked out the proper name. So
Good.
yeah.
Love it. Well, that's exciting. I'm excited to see how these things come into play in the marketplace and how they actually create utility and how they're used.
Yeah.
Shall we jump to ordinals, or Jerry, did you want to contribute anything on the script pieces?
No, I think Cain covered it quite well.
Covered it pretty well. Yeah. So let's talk about ordinals. Everybody's going crazy over ordinals. I think ordinals are a great example of showing kind of the BTC world what Bitcoin can actually do and opening their eyes, right? But talk to us about ordinals. What are they? Why are people going crazy about them? And ordinals on STAS specifically.
Who wants to take that?
Go for it, Jerry.
Oh gosh. Yep. I'm not an expert voice, but okay, I've been watching this from the sidelines, so I'll just tell you what I've noticed from the sidelines.
Same.
I mean, ordinals looks like it came from some guy named Udi, I think, and somebody else on the BTC side of project. It was made possible because of the Taproot upgrade that BTC made. I think installed sometime last year, November of last year, something like that. And that change allowed, for the first time since, 2011 maybe, it allowed more data to be stored on a BTC transaction. And that's, you can, this is a very significant thing, because if this was done back in 2011, Ethereum wouldn't exist. So we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar project wouldn't exist at all, because this is exactly what Vitalik was asking for, and a lot of folks were asking for. There was a lot of developers. I just joined. I just heard about Bitcoin around this time, around 2012. But there were already developers who were arguing with the Luddites who ran the BTC Core project, for the last decade or more. And to make it so that they can store more data, because I think the limit was like 80 bytes on BTC. No, sorry, it was 40 bytes. And I think that after all these arguments, they said, you know what, fine, we'll make it 80. And
right.
Just
which is so minuscule.
Yeah, I mean, to give you an example, 80 bytes will store you. I don't know, like 20 characters. I don't know. Okay, it depends on whether or not they're double byte characters in your like Asian language. Anyway, it'll store you less than a tweet. All right, about a third of a tweet.
So say that again, because we're going to put that on the screen when we edit this. So if this size of data had been allowed on a block in 2011, Ethereum would not exist. You said it more eloquently. How did you say it, Jerry?
Yeah, if this change was made back in 2011, we wouldn't have Ethereum today. A multi-billion-dollar project just poof, like no reason to exist, because all they wanted to do was to be able to store enough information to represent tokens, right? Back to the same thing we're talking about now, right? People have been trying to do tokens forever. So 40 characters, 40 bytes or 80 bytes, about 40 characters or so is not enough information, not enough space to store any sort of thing significant. So that's kind of hobbled Bitcoin development like since 2012. And with Taproot, they didn't actually intend, so that's the irony, because those Luddites still didn't want to allow people to store data onto BTC, but they didn't intend for it. But because of the way SegWit works, and what Taproot allowed, because Taproot allowed some new opcodes. Effectively, it's the old opcodes that they turned off in BTC that they never turned back on, but they turned it back on in Taproot. So basically, to turn it back on, so long as it was using a SegWit sort of witness space, which is a technical term. Don't worry about it. It's something that only BTC has, because they did this in 2017, which caused all the forks. But yeah, effectively allowed you to stuff a lot more data in. Still not a lot, but a lot more than 80 bytes. And so because
it's evolutionary in my mind, because that was one of the huge pieces of the arguments, right? I mean, when SegWit came out, I mean, we were arguing about the size of blocks, right? And the size of the data, right? So very interesting that you say if they had been able to put this amount of data that they can now in ordinals back in 2011, Ethereum would never even have existed. Like that's
because they've always been anti-data. Like these Luddites have they didn't want anything that is not a financial transaction, right? They didn't want any data to be stored. They call it it's all spam to them. They've been quoted saying this, right? Many of them, it's it's all spam. Let's filter it all out. But anyhow, they accidentally enabled it inadvertently, and somebody named Udi and some other developers decided. I think they dug up an old proposal, which was an ordinals proposal, which effectively is just a way of counting satoshis. Won't go into technical details, but if you counted every satoshi that was issued, that was minted from every block, you can kind of give them a number. And some guy, I don't think it was Udi, because Udi implemented, but some other guy sometime before said, hey, it would be cool if we can just, if we had a place to store, if our op-return space was a little bit bigger, we can store an arbitrary binary data, like a picture or something like that. Yeah, and we can associate it with a satoshi.
Right.
And that it was implemented kind of tongue-in-cheek by this guy named Udi. It caused an explosion of excitement of a lot of folks who are, I guess, getting bored of paying high gas fees in Ethereum, so they went over the BTC to pay high BTC fees instead. But but still, it's there's millions of NFTs flying around the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Yeah,
hundreds of thousands of dollars of NFTs going back for. I hazard to even say $1 million of NFTs getting minted in BTC.
I'm sure. It's probably more than, and it's just mind-blowing to those of us in the BSV world, because we know that this capability has existed. I mean, that's what we've been fighting for the longest time, right? So it's to see all these people open their eyes and it's how long have we been telling you this?
Yeah, I suppose it just requires the BTC blockchain network effect, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's because, well, at the end of the day, it's a lot of this NFTs is people's just speculative gains, right? They're thinking to mint something so they can earn. And so if you're not playing that game, if you're going to gamble with blockchains, you want to be gambling with BTC as your base, I suppose, because it has liquidity and exchanges. So you don't want to be stuck with an NFT. And if you did it on another chain like BSV or Solana or Algorand or Avalanche, ADA, whatever, any of these other lesser liquid blockchains, then there's no point in minting an NFT there, because how are you going to sell it? How are you going to cash out, right? So that's really the big reason why there's a huge wave of people doing it in BTC, because it's boom, now I can start printing Pepe memes and I don't know what's the other ones. There's been the monkey memes already. Pick a meme. Everybody's printing NFTs like crazy, just to claim to get the 10x, the sweet returns, the degenerate gambling.
So before we move to STAS tokens on the ordinals, what's your view, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about one-sat ordinals and kind of what BSV's play on this whole ordinal craze.
I'll let Cain, you want to do that?
Anybody watch wallets or the one-sat ordinals?
Yeah, I actually had a call last week with Luke from Gorilla Pool, one of the guys behind one-sat ordinals as well. And, it was a really good call. I learned a lot from him. He's really experienced, and, they're kicking goals with ordinals on BSV. They really are. They're doing really well. They got a lot of traction, a lot of people interested, and when it was happening on BTC, they went, hey, let's just do it on BSV. It's like 1 million times cheaper, right? So, and it can scale. So
Developer.
And look, people are getting super excited, and they're minting all these different tokens with different metadata in them, and the whole idea is to get people using BSV, and I think this is a great example of that. Of people just experimenting and having a go, and that's what it's all about. That's how things grow and end up being something in the longer run, anyway. So yeah, I had a great conversation with Luke, and learned about a few things that I didn't know also about the ordinals. I'm still sort of deep diving into it a bit more, But I did the first ordinals on top of STAS tokens. So when I did that, what's on chain would pick it up, and it would say, yeah, this is a one-side ordinal, but the indexes from Gorilla Pool actually did not pick it up. So I spoke to Luke about that as well, and it's a small thing. It can probably be adjusted later on if we the idea is that we want to put ordinals on top of STAS. And STAS tokens is like I say, it's just a base protocol, so you can build any type of token on top of it. It doesn't matter. So you can build ordinals on top of STAS, and there are some key benefits, I think, in doing so. And I want to see if people are interested in that as well. But one of the key things is that when you create an ordinal on top of STAS, and if you're using the STAS 789 token, you're constantly adding more data to this token. And as you transfer it, you can add metadata in, you could add messages or encrypted data or hash of data or anything using overlay networks, whatever you want to do. And it can still be an ordinal. So one of the things, if I send you a STAS ordinal, you actually have all of the information about that token without needing to ask the indexer, what is this ordinal? Because that currently, ordinals work great, but you do need the indexes. And what Luke and his team have done, they've outsourced it's publicly available, the indexes, so anyone can just index their own tokens. And what indexing means is that they can just check the blockchain for their tokens and get the information about their tokens and the history of their tokens, and they create these data maps. And then if you have an address that has some ordinals, you can say, hey, what's the information about all my tokens on my address? And then it will return all of that information. And that is the whole idea behind indexing. But with the STAS version,
which was a huge problem before, right? Indexing was a huge problem. So this is a big solve, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's good that anyone can do it, right? That's the big thing. You don't have to rely on a single indexer or whatever else. It's all open source. So, anyone can just go up and start indexing their own tokens. But with the STAS version, you wouldn't have to do that. You could just get your token. It has all the data from the start of the, when you first issued that ordinal to the present. I was thinking about the use cases, and you can think about, if Satoshi were to register an address and everyone knew that this address belonged to a Satoshi, and if I just say I minted a STAS 1,000 STAS ordinals, and then I got the transaction ID of that issuance, and I asked Satoshi to sign a message using that transaction ID, and then I could add that to my token. So it's like a signed, you could say a signed NFT by Satoshi that is always going to be inside of that script, and it will never be removed. You don't have to ask the indexer if it's there, because it's already locked in there. And would that maybe make your NFT more valuable? If someone could sign it, I mean, it doesn't have to be Satoshi, it could be anyone. You could create, cricket tokens, and then you could get some famous cricket players to come along and sign a message. And if they registered an address that was publicly recognized, then they could sign and say that this is an official token, for example. And that brings the things up another level, right? Because now you don't have to rely on the indexer to tell you, hey, someone signed it. You have the token itself. You can see everything there. The data's there. And, I think this is one of the benefits that you could, one of the key benefits for doing ordinals on top of STAS, and as an option, right? So, this is something that I'm looking into, and looking to help sort of build out some examples of that and do some documentation. So to see if people are interested and to start, just experimenting is the idea. And that's how one-side ordinal stuff went.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's very, very smart. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to be excited about that capability. Very cool.
Yeah,
all right.
Hope so. Yeah.
So STAS protocol, there are many popular and well-known BSV companies and figures that were developed on top of STAS. So let's talk about that a little bit. I know that Senti's stablecoin is built on the STAS protocol, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yep, that's
and
correct.
Then, Daniel Lipschitz has announced, and probably get the name of the company wrong. Is it Change? I'll have to look it up. But Daniel Lipschitz and Jimmy Nguyen have announced a stablecoin this week that's also built on the STAS protocol, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Any other big names that we would recognize?
Soundoshi, they're doing their NFT like music tokens using the STAS tokens as well. So there are some existing platforms. Music art, they've been around for a while. They were one of the early clients of Vaionex, and their platform is currently running and been running for a long time now. But there's I'm sure there's a few more. Top of my head, I can't remember, but we're seeing a lot more interest. We're seeing a lot more interest in STAS tokens, just because it's such a neutral way to do tokens. You don't have to, like I said, it's not third parties relying on third parties. This is probably to build tokens. This is the way to do it if you don't want to rely on third parties as much as possible. So. Right.
It simplifies it. It's easier. It almost automates it to some degree, right? And I think Senti and the new stablecoin from Daniel Lifshitz, those are going to be huge. Those are going to be game changers in the industry. Senti's already doing extraordinary things and making a huge impact. So I think as those each continue to grow in their own market share and their market adoption, then it'll show the power of the STAS protocol as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm expecting it to just keep growing from here. And sort of that's why the new SDK had to be built. We have the new scripts, and no one had actually a way to use the new scripts in a library. So now that it's ready, anyone can just get in there and start creating tokens and experimenting with it. And I should note also there is a lot of questions around the STAS tokens and the licensing that is involved. There is a license that was added into the STAS tokens with the original STAS token through TAL. I can't really speak on all of the information about the licenses and everything else, but I know that if anyone wants to use it just as a public to build NFTs, to build tokens, there's no license required. This is more for commercial use cases. We're talking like things like banks. You could, for example, they would need a commercial license to issue tokens to a global audience. It's completely different to just people creating tokens for their use cases. It won't be relevant to that. There will be some updated documentation coming for the licensing, probably after the conference. And just keep an eye out for that. It just gives people more clarity and more reassurance that they're not going to worry about someday down the track, there's some hidden license that's going to bite them. That's not the case. So yeah. So I mean, it's not the case. It's just it's all open. So feel free to just get in there and just start experimenting and and just basically it's all about thinking of use cases, seeing the templates, and the SDK has also a chart. It'll tell you all the properties of each of the tokens and the functionality of each of the tokens, and that way you can assess them and you can choose which token script suits your needs, right? And as things move on, we expect to have more scripts. Ones with such as royalty payments, where, for example, if you make a transfer of a token, you also have to add in a royalty payment to a specific address for it to be valid. These type of different use cases or different token scripts, people can just use their imagination to do things with them. So the main thing is that most of the STAS tokens that are created now, the scripts that are created now, it's all around demand, right? So as long as there's demand for these type of things, that's when they sort of get into the pipeline to be built.
If I may as well, just hearing you talk made me remember like one of the sort of the unique things, the unique difference between STAS and other token protocols is it's easiest to think of STAS as true as possible an analogy of you taking a dollar bill, like a physical dollar bill, and then signing stuff on it, right? Writing your name on it, whatever, getting some famous person's signature on it, like you said, like getting somebody to sign it, and then literally passing that bill around. Like the signature is stuck on the bill, right? Yeah. You can't lose that fact. You can't separate the signature from the dollar bill it was signed on. So instead of a dollar bill in this case, we're using satoshis of Bitcoin, right? So it actually is one or a group of satoshis, and that group of satoshis, or that one satoshi, is the same satoshi being passed around. That's kind of like what the STAS protocol at the basic STAS protocol guarantees, that this satoshi will not be mixed with others, right? And then swapped accidentally. So now that you have this thing which encapsulates one satoshi, one coin, then you can start signing stuff on it, and like Cain said, you can have this whole digital trail of information stuck to this, written on this coin. So no other token protocols I know of does this. They always kind of dissimulate. You don't really have a coin generally. You have an entry on a ledger. You have an entry on somebody else's ledger. You call it an indexer or something like that. And they say you have an NFT, but you have an entry on their ledger. And then generally you don't even have the picture, like these monkey pictures that people are trading around. That monkey picture is on some other site, like, like a data store, like IPFS site or something. So you have an entry on a ledger which has a link to a picture on some data storage cloud service. Right. So I don't know why these things are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a joke, really. But
I always argue that.
So yeah, with STAS, you actually have the coin. You can say you have the coin, and you literally have all the stuff that's written on the coin with the coin. Right? You don't need to trust any other ledger account server somewhere. You have it there in your wallet.
Yeah, and this is why when we talked about doing STAS with ordinals on top, we sort of called it like a hardened ordinal, because it's like a version that has all the information already in the script, already in the token, right? So you don't need to ask the indexers about that information. But you still could. The indexers, if you say I want to get all the information about my tokens, you could still return the information of your STAS token. But you could always just look at the token and decode it, get all the information straight out of it. So
I think I've heard, what I hear is you guys saying that STAS, these tokens are the closest peer-to-peer electronic cash on the tokenization side. Is that accurate, or is that a little bit too much of a stretch?
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate, because it's it's basically on the blockchain layer, right? So it doesn't rely on anything else.
Yeah.
So
yeah, brilliant. I love it. All right, so somebody mentioned the conference. As of the time of this recording, it is Wednesday the 24th, and we are exactly 1 week away from the London Blockchain Conference. Who's going to be at the conference here on the show? Cain, will you be there?
Yes, actually. So I'll be there, and I'll come out with a friend of mine who's an old Bitcoin guy. So he's looking to really get involved in the space a lot more. We've been hashing things out for at least 18 months. He wants to build so many different things. So I want to introduce him to everyone. So hopefully, can meet everyone there. And also I get to meet everyone I've been working with for the last 2.5 years. I haven't actually met anyone in person yet at Vaionex. So this will be a really good, so this will be a great opportunity. Yeah.
Amazing. When I first went in 2020, I felt like I knew at least half the room. Like all I did was like go hug everybody, like Brendan from Australia and Michael Hudson. Yeah. Amazing. So will you be presenting anything from stage about your new developments, Cain, or Vaionex's new developments?
Well, we have an exhibit, so I'll be helping with the exhibit while I'm there, and just basically talking to people about it and answering questions if people have any. So I'm not speaking. Robin is speaking at the event for the CEO. So he'll cover a lot of stuff for the company. Yeah.
Amazing. He's an eloquent speaker. I love hearing him. Jerry, I know I saw your name on the list of speakers. What will you be presenting?
I'll be talking about my project that I've been working on for the last year.
Yeah, so let's hear more about Frobots, please.
Yeah, give us a sneak peek.
Because I understand that there's some sentient AI beings that are all that remains on Earth. Is that true?
Yes, we've been developing Skynet, and we're going to announce that we've already taken all your base already belong to us. No, it's I think the reputation preceded it. No, there's no AI, but it's a distributed. It is based on a distributed computational platform. that could be generically, generic computation, but it's a game. It's a game where you learn how to code strategies which sort of fight each other. It's kind of like BattleBots, if you've ever watched BattleBots, that show, except not mechanical and not physical, right? So you're writing software and your software fights each other. And so it's hope to introduce a little bit of competition, a little bit of learning. I'm very, very much involved and passionate about getting people to learn computer science, especially, the younger generation. I got 3 kids myself, and I have to make sure they're all know how to code. I think someone, I can't remember right now, it might have been Mark Andreessen or something, said that there are only 2 types of people in the world in the future. It's going to be people who know how to write, people who are going to tell computers what to do, and people who computers tell what to do.
Yeah.
So you better be one of the ones that are telling computers what to do.
That's a good way to look at it. Here in Florida, we have a mayor in Miami who pushed for coding as curriculum in elementary school. And we have a former senator, 10 years. He was actually the head of sales for Yahoo. He was the second employee of Yahoo. And he also pushed for legislation so that kids were learning how to code in primary school. So it hasn't happened. I haven't seen it happen yet, but certainly some people that have been very innovative and pushing the innovation for more than a decade. And so I hope that we continue to see that pattern and make sure that these people are telling the computer what to do.
Well, I mean, I grew up in a generation where I think I got interested in computers because there was a game called Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego on the Commodore 64 at my class and stuff like that.
Your age away now, Jerry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Commodore 64.
Yeah, I was. We were one of the first schools with a C64. The other schools had the PET. That was like all monochrome green, like matrix computer. But yeah, no, like that's exactly the audience I'm looking for. I mean, it's probably just gonna be geeks, right? Who just like to say like, my Frobot can beat the crap out of yours. My daddy's can beat the crap out of yours. But I would really love to engage, educational programs like that, because I would love it if I could have learned programming by having a competition where everybody just had a month to just write, train their Frobot, and then just have a tournament at the end, first, second, third, gold, silver, bronze, give out prizes. I think that'd be hilariously fun. Even if you lose, you learn. I mean, it's learning computer science is much more fun and easy if you have a purpose to it, right? It's not just like I'm going there, I'm listening to this person tell me about if loops or if statements and conditionals and loop. Boring, right? It's like listening to math and calculus. Like,
interesting you just said math and calculus, because my niece, I picked her up from school yesterday and she's learning money math. Now, she doesn't like math, but the idea of actually learning math and money together actually really excited her, because then I understand how to use money and how it works. I'm like, well, what a great idea. Just making sure that it's money math instead of just math.
Anything that's interactive and gives you pragmatic use and gets your brain, you want to think thinking about it, you get excited versus conceptual, right?
Yes, exactly. Applied learning or applied sciences is a big difference. I think your niece is going to be an engineer. Like, she's like me. Holy hackathon, that's a good idea. Actually, that'd be.
As you're describing this, I'm thinking, let's have this alongside hackathon. As a matter of fact, Jerry, Exeter starts their hackathon with their students a week, probably this week or a few days before the conference, and it goes all the way through the end of summer. So you have all of Jack Rogers students that are participating in the hackathon. X-Man is going to actually teach at Exeter the week after the conference. And then you have Rohan Sharan in India. He created a summer of code program emulating, what Google had done. And he originally anticipated taking 200 students. And now they've announced this week that they're taking 1,000 student interns over the summer. So any of those programs, I'm sure those students would love an opportunity to learn how to hack away at the Frobots and have a competition at the end.
That would be hilarious. Yeah, that'd be great. I'm gonna make sure we work a lot harder to make sure we're ready for that. Then 1,000 players all at once. That's gonna be some stress test.
We can have Indian kids or students fighting with the Exeter kids or something. We call them kids, but you know what I mean, students. That would be super fun. All right. So what was the story you guys were telling backstage about how you first were discussing tokens and at the 2019 conference.
Oh, right. So I think it just occurred to me when we were talking earlier before the show that it's been exactly 4 years. And I say exactly because I assume these conferences are always around the end of May. If it wasn't, then it's not exactly. But it was exactly the conference 4 years ago in London, which I checked. It was at the Four Seasons, Trinity Square, and that's when STAS sat down right in the middle. There's like a cafe right in the middle of that sort of hotel sort of lobby, and say like, Jerry, I figured it out, man. I figured it out. I was like, what did you figure out? I figured out the back to Genesis problem. We can do tokens. I figured it out. I was like, and then he was like, okay, so you gotta help me with some business use cases. I was like, oh, token business use cases? I don't know, man. But yeah, that was yeah. So that was where it all started. I think maybe I don't think I was the first, but I was one of the early ones who he told it about, and he's bouncing ideas off of. And I guess it's not a template that I think is in use anymore. It's probably one of the original early not so optimized ones he had that was about more than 700 bytes. But it worked, right? It basically preserved the sats, the satoshis within, and it made sure that the contract was propagated after every transaction so that you couldn't break it. And yeah, so that was
again, it was pragmatic. It showed, right? It showed how to do it. That's amazing. We should have a celebratory party then in London next week to celebrate. If we can't pull it off in a week, then we will plan it for the next year, the 5th year anniversary.
Of a birthday cake.
Well, we'll have how far have we come in the last year versus the last 5 years?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Very cool. All right. Anything else you guys want to cover? You try to keep these short and sweet, and I know we're already at like 52 minutes here. Is there anything else anybody would like to contribute to the conversation before we wrap?
I'd just like to say, if anyone wants to test out the new SDK, you can go to stastoken.com. You check out the docs there, and there's a link to the GitHub repo, and feel free to try it out. If you got any questions, there's a STAS Telegram channel. We might be setting up a Discord channel. We'll have to see. And just interested to see what people build and ideas people come up with, because it's like a fresh thing, right? So whoever gets in early and comes up with the best ideas sort of normally do quite well. So yeah, let's see it. So.
I love it. Maybe we should do some kind of hackathon or challenge around that. Get people out there using it and testing it.
Yeah, sounds great.
Trying to break it. Okay. All right. Let's get one quick little picture, since I keep trying to take a picture, and every time Jerry's like,
you've been taking pictures. Oh gosh,
okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, tequila. All right. Let me see if I got it. All right. Thank you. That came out good. All right.
You should do another one with Cain in the center as well.
We should. I was like, this time. Okay, one on 3. 1, 2, 3. That's cute. All right. Hopefully that came out good. All right. That's good. Jerry looks silly, but it's cute. All right.
So thank you so much, guys, for such an educational kind of like little program here. And I'm hoping that Frobots goes from strength to strength, and I want to see this 1,000 students and everybody. I think it would be absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us, and make sure that if you do go to a London blockchain conference, you go and say hello to Cain and hello to Jerry, and I'll be there on the 31st, but not until about after midday. And I'm hoping Robin's going to be there, but you've got a long way to fly, so hopefully you'll
see the WomenofBSV and go check out STAS's SDK.
Yep, yes. Definitely. So thank you very much, guys, and namaste.
Yeah.